Alrighty, what's up, everybody? I'm Jacob Tyson, and this is another episode of Real Talk, Real Tips. This episode is from the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. Today, I am here with Dalton Norris. Unfortunately, Miss Taylor couldn't be here today, and we are going to be talking all about walleye fishing. So, Dalton, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Dalton Norris. I am the Northwest Region Fisheries Biologist. So basically, I-40 North and 35 West is kind of my whole region. So the top corner plus all the Panhandle.
Yeah, quite a bit of states you got up there.
Yeah,
especially the Panhandle.
It's roughly 26% of the state is in my region.
That's crazy. That's awesome. So do you have any other interests aside from like just the outdoors in general?
Yeah, I mean, hunting and fishing are probably the two biggest ones. A little bit of trapping. I mean, I know that falls under outdoor stuff.
Right.
Not a lot of people trap anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up north, so hockey was a big thing.
Hockey.
So I played hockey growing up,
Yeah.
and that's something I've been following right now because playoffs are on.
Awesome.
So I've been watching a lot of hockey.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. I can definitely hear a little bit of that northerner in your voice.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of it.
You get that a lot?
Yes.
Yeah, people be like, hey, what?
Hey, they say I talk out of my nose.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, we're not trying to like step on any toes with any viewers either, but so how did you kind of get started fishing for walleye?
Yeah, like growing up north. So they're kind of everywhere. A lot of your small lakes are usually walleye, a pike, and perch fishery.
Right.
So that's usually most of what you're trying to fish for. So, I mean, as a kid, you load up in the pickup and go to a lake, and walleye are one of the best things you can eat up there.
Yeah.
So that's what you're chasing, trying to catch them.
Well, even here, like Oklahoma is known for typically like bass, crappie, paddlefish.
Yep.
But we kind of have this like hidden gem of a walleye fishery that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely something that I think we can take advantage of here as just a great like way to put food on the table.
Yep.
And they fight like beautifully.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll give you some head shakes and roll a little bit.
Telling you earlier, the very first one I ever caught, I thought I was pulling up a tire full of mud. Like he had my rod just bent over and I'm sitting there like, what, whose boot am I pulling up type thing. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But so what's kind of your favorite part of walleye fishing?
Probably they're the best tasting fish, I would say, down here.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of people talk back and forth about crappie or walleye, but there's more meat on a walleye.
That's true. That's true.
Easier to fillet, and they taste just as good, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you do you do like a pan sear, or are you battering them up, frying them?
Yeah, I usually batter them.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of videos of people trying stuff.
Oh,
and I started using hot sauce as my binder when I deep fry them.
Oh, okay.
So hot sauce before you bread them, that's pretty tasty.
Hey, we just had a pretty big fish fry for here in the department, and I'm not a mustard guy.
Yeah.
And we were cooking up catfish, and they combined 2 parts ranch with 1 part mustard as the binder. It'll change your life, dude.
Sounds good.
On catfish, like it'll change your life.
It sounds good.
So you work out at Canton Lake, right?
Yes.
So Canton Lake can you kind of tell us a little bit about that? Just the history behind Canton and like some of the popular walleye events that go on there?
Yeah. So Canton Lake, it's a Army Corps of Engineers lake. That's our second biggest lake in the region. And I guess it'll be, next week? Week after next.
15th through the 18th?
Correct. Yep. Walleye rodeo. So it's a big walleye fishing tournament. We go out there as a department and we tag fish and stuff to help them out because those fish are worth monetary prizes usually.
Right.
So we tag a handful of walleye and then a bunch of other species to, incentivize anglers to get out there and try and report that fish to try and make some money out there fishing. But it's the longest standing fishing tournament in the state.
Right.
Canton Lake Walleye Rodeo.
So this might be like a dumb question. So you take these tagged walleye for this fishing tournament and you just release them back in the lake, right?
Yes.
So, like, what are the odds somebody actually catches one?
Very slim.
Like, I mean, because you're putting one fish back in an entire lake.
So I think we tagged like 10 to 20 a year, and
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to win it. I don't know.
Yeah.
In recent history, people that have won it, but
that's awesome.
Yeah.
How long have you been like in the Canton area as the biologist?
2 years.
2 years.
So I just hit 2 years last month.
Awesome. I would be interested to know, like, if people catch tagged fish from like previous years of the walleye rodeo.
I haven't heard of anyone catching our walleye tagged fish.
Oh, yeah.
Because the walleye get a different set of tags than the rest of the other sport fish that we tag.
Oh, I gotcha. So all the fish in the tournament are possibly tagged?
Correct. We tag a bunch of sport fish species. So your hybrids, your stripers. We'll tag some sand bass. And then if someone catches those, they have a colored tag on them.
Right.
And they can get, $20 or a rattle trap or something.
Oh, I gotcha. Just like some prizes and stuff like that. That's cool.
And the big money's in the walleye tags, and those are numbered individually.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere when I was kind of studying up for this that you could win up to $500 just for catching a fish, and it's like what, a $10 entry fee?
Something like that.
So yeah, it's pretty cheap. I thought that was like a cool way to get out, get started.
Yeah.
If you've never gone walleye fished and you want to get started, what better place than a tournament full of walleye anglers?
Exactly. And I mean, if you don't know what you're doing, just ask somebody. I'm sure they'll tell you.
Or just watch.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm the worst about like going to the lake, watching a guy catch fish, and then being like, oh, what's he fishing with? Be like, what's working today?
Yep.
But can you kind of get into kind of some of your favorite lures, maybe your rod and reel setup that you like to use for walleye fishing?
Okay. I usually stick to a medium light rod.
Mm-hmm.
It helps me feel the fish better.
Okay.
And then I usually run braid to a fluoro leader because the walleye can't see the braid as well.
Okay.
But you still get the strength and the sensitivity of the braid for most of your reel.
Gotcha.
Jig heads with some sort of soft plastic, usually a twister tail grub type plastic. Bouncing them if they're spawning on the dam, bouncing them on the rocks on the way in, and that'll usually get you some good bites.
Gotcha.
Later in the summer, you control whether that's like deep diving crankbaits or jerk baits. Up north, we used to run crawler harnesses.
Right.
That's pretty difficult down here. You need a lot of sand, and that's it. So it makes it a little harder. But
so we do have some, they're not necessarily walleye, but Sawguy, Sauger lakes such as Lugert down southwest. Can you kind of describe that harness that you're talking about? Because that's a pretty sandy bottomed lake.
So you usually run a bottom bouncer. So it's kind of a chunk of lead. And it's got two pieces of, I guess, straight spring. There's no coil to them. And then your line comes through the top. And then you tie that off about 3 to 6 foot, depending on how far you're trying to roll it behind you. And you run that to your crawler harness, which is a piece of fluoro that has 2 hooks on it.
Right.
And then a handful of beads in front of the 2 hooks with the spinner blade bait on it. And then you rig the crawler up so it kind of spins. It's got a little bit of its tail sticking out.
Right.
And then that blade will spin, kind of make a thump and give you some flash too while it's down there.
Gotcha. Just try to attract the attention. Yep. And kind of initiate a strike.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you're talking about their eyesight. Can you kind of provide some more detail on that? I know they're more of a low light species. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at them, you can see the size of their eyes. They see very well, and that kind of sunset into the first parts of the night are usually pretty good, and then the other way in the morning. So right as it's starting to turn into dawn, it's kind of where you thrive catching them most of the time because they can see so well in the dark.
Right. So time of year, we just talked about how right now a lot of these walleye are coming off the dam and headed back out into deeper water. Can you kind of give us your best tips on, say, for a bank angler, what's the best way to target a walleye this time of year?
There may still be a few on the dam or in the rocks where they're spawning.
Right.
So you can try and bounce a jig head through there. The males might still be up there.
Right.
If not, they're kind of hit and miss at the moment. Once you start getting into a little bit warmer waters, warmer temperatures, you can start hitting them in deeper water, trying to either troll or cast for them in deeper water.
Right. Throwing some like probably 15-foot, 20-foot crankbaits.
Yeah.
Just really trying to get down
Get
the
as deep
dark,
as you can.
low light.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I think that's a big kind of misconception almost, is that like you can catch walleye all day long, but you're going to greatly increase your odds going early morning or late afternoon.
Yes.
Those fish are a lot more active. It's kind of, I mean, really that way with a lot of fish.
Yeah.
Like, especially I'm a big bass fisherman. So you look early morning, late afternoon, these bass are out feeding. Same with the walleye. The walleye are going to be more active. They're going to be in shallower water due to the feed.
Yep.
So you're just trying to imitate whatever bait fish that the walleye are chasing after at the time.
And I mean, the nastier the weather, sometimes the better too.
Yeah. Well, you talk about the walleye chop.
Yeah. You need a little bit of wave action across the top of the water.
Yeah.
That's when they start feeding better. That's when people catch them.
For sure.
Your best, beautiful, flat, calm, no wind days are usually your worst days to go try and fish walleye.
Right.
If you're miserable, a lot of times the fishing's better.
Yeah, you got a point. Can you kind of describe for the viewers why that is?
Yeah, it just that's when the fish start moving. So if you have waves, you have wind causing waves, it kind of will move your bait around.
Right.
And that bait usually ends up on the wind blown side.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps you target where the bait is, target where the fish are going to be.
Right.
And then also that chop across the top of the water helps limit visibility of your boat too, if you're fishing from a boat.
Right.
So like I said, with their big eyes, it's a little harder to see when the water's choppy than if it was just flat calm.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I know, like, for me, right now, Lake Hefner has been getting hit pretty hard on the windblown side. So basically all that means is you want the wind at your face.
Yep.
So when you're fishing, you want the waves coming at you on the bank. Like I said, a lot of those bait fish don't have the power to fight the wind all the time. And so the wind is going to push the bait fish whichever way it's blowing. And that's kind of where you want to target. And you want to make sure you're using very similar and like baits to the bait fish. So
yes, match the hatch is what they say.
And a lot of our lakes would be shad.
Correct.
For the walleye. So whether you're throwing a silver rattle trap or some type of silver crankbait, on your really dark days, would you suggest like going to maybe a brighter, like your chartreuses, your neons?
At least in my experience, down here, a lot of times your dark days, you fish something darker. That seems to be, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I would feel like in my brain, but usually when it's dark or the water's stained, I fish something darker and end up doing better than I would with, say, a white or a chartreuse or a pink. I usually end up better with something dark, like a dark blue or black. Gotcha.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff on that. It kind of has to do with like the shadow of the bait.
Yep.
Yeah, the fishing out here is just something like otherworldly.
Yes.
But once you figure it out, it's on.
Yes.
You also talked about the sand bass.
Yep.
We've had a lot of rain recently. Can you kind of talk about your recent sand bass adventure?
Yeah. They're running up the river at Canton Lake.
Yeah.
So we went out there, fished for them, caught a few in a couple hours, and then they're up there where there's people fishing pretty much the whole river, either with a boat or fishing from shore. And they're catching the mess out of them right now.
That's awesome. Yeah. These spring rains bring in a lot of movement from the sand bass. You get a big spring rain like this, like we've had lately. Man, it's probably been 10 inches in the last 2 weeks.
It's been a lot
of rain. Once this rain comes in, post rain, you need to be out fishing the rivers for sand bass.
Yep.
Take advantage of it because they're moving. So do you have any like interesting stories? Just walleye fishing, maybe biggest walleye you've ever caught, worst day, anything interesting like that?
Biggest walleye I've caught, I've never caught anything crazy huge.
Right.
My biggest one's probably 25, 26 inches, which is
a
good
here's
walleye,
pretty good.
But nothing huge. I mean, I have heard of multiple people catching 30s,
Oh,
and,
yeah. Here or up north?
Up north, yeah.
Right.
Coming from up north, I guess one of my favorite stories was probably ice fishing.
Oh, yeah?
So I had a buddy, there was a bunch of us out there, but we were fishing for a burbot, is what they're called, on Lake Superior.
Okay.
This benthic, bottom-feeding, slimy, nasty fish, but they don't taste too bad. So we said
they sound like they taste pretty bad.
No, they're actually pretty good. They call them the poor man's lobster.
Okay.
So and that's how a lot of people.
Okay, so I could get behind a little lobster-like fish.
Yeah. So we were fishing. It turned into night, and we were fishing tip-ups. Mm-hmm. Well, we were also on a little bit of sketchy ice, but all good fishing stories come from a
little sketchy story. Right.
It's got to have a little.
You got a full send
danger
here and there.
We ended up catching all these burbot, and we were checking our tip-ups, and we
Right.
didn't have lights on them, and we went to one of them, and it was completely spooled. So my buddy jumped down, he threw a tip-up out of the hole, set the hook, and there's still a fish on it. So he pulled in all of his line, hand lined it for a tip-up, and he pulled a 27-incher out. But when he pulled it out, we were all crowding around the hole, so we could just see the water level just start rising up on our boots, and we're like, hey, we should probably back up. But that was probably the most memorable, I guess.
That's awesome. Do you mind describing, I can make sure I know what you're talking about, a tip-up? That's one that it's got a flag on it, right?
Correct.
And so when that fish pulls the line, it tips that flag up.
Correct.
Okay.
So usually it's just got a T on it.
Right.
And it's got a free spool. Mm-hmm. So you set your bait, usually running your live minnow about a foot off the bottom.
Right.
And then you put that flag under the T because it's connected to the spool sticking up out of the hole. The spool's down in the water, but then the T's up out of the water. And then when the fish takes that, it'll turn that spool a little bit. And when it turns that spool, that flag will come up.
Gotcha.
And then there's a fish on it.
So it's kind of like the above water version of a jug line almost.
Pretty much.
Like you're kind of just leaving it out there to let it sit, go back to the ice house, party maybe.
Yeah.
And then come back out, check them later.
Yep.
That's what I love about jug fishing, like for catfish, is that I can go out, set my jugs, and then just relax for a little while.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool that you can do that with walleye.
Yeah.
I'd love to find a way out here maybe. I know this past winter, I actually saw quite a few people ice fishing.
Yep.
It got so cold that people started doing it here on some of their local ponds.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that I recommend it just due to the kind of sketchy nature of it here, but
make sure you got safe ice.
Right. So when you are fishing from the bank, how do you look for, say, like a good walleye area?
Well, I guess one of the first ways are other people fishing there.
Okay.
If you got a lot of people fishing one area, there's probably fish in there.
Right.
I mean, maybe not go run up right in between all those people, but
definitely
fish at least close enough to them that, if the fish are in one corner of a lake, say, try and get in that corner if that's where everyone's fishing, if the rest of the lake's empty. Access is also big. Mm-hmm. So get somewhere where you can comfortably go rather than, sometimes you got to walk to get places, but don't try and break your neck. Know your limitations trying to get somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
And then weed lines kind of help too. If you can find a weed line, that kind of change of habitat helps as well.
For sure. It's kind of. Do you have any opinion on like looking for points, jetties, fishing along riprap compared to maybe like a weeded bank, just different things like that you might look for while you're out?
Yeah, it depends on the time of the year.
Okay.
So during spawn, they're going to be in the rocks. So you're going to have to get to the rocks to fish.
So it's like early April kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're going to want to get into the rocks with them because that's where they're all going to be at.
Gotcha.
During the summer, you're going to want to start fishing deeper water. That water's going to warm up. They're going to get deep, try and stay cold.
Right.
So you're going to have to look for that. Kind of topography changes, bathymetry changes in the bottom of the lake. So a lot of times humps are good.
Yeah.
If you can find humps around the lake that are still underwater.
Right.
But a lot of times they'll sit on those kind of contour edges.
Gotcha.
Not on the top of the hump, not at the bottom, kind of somewhere in the middle.
Cool. So do you have any suggestions maybe for somebody that is either just starting out fishing and also somebody who's been fishing for a while but just wants some kind of extra help?
Yeah, I mean, fish the spawn first. That's the best time to
Right.
catch them. So when they're starting to stack up on the rocks, get out there and fish.
Mm-hmm.
Usually start right before sunset and fish all night if you want to. And then if you can't find them then, wait till the morning, fish them right before the sun comes up,
Mm-hmm.
and fish that as well. Also, just get out there and try stuff.
Right.
You know, sometimes fish are finicky. So
For sure.
maybe they don't like what every single person's throwing, but you got something different in your tackle box. Try it. See if it works.
Definitely.
It can't hurt. If you're already catching no fish,
Mm-hmm.
it can't hurt to change something up and see if it works.
Right. For our anglers who maybe aren't super knowledgeable about catching walleye, can you kind of talk about how to handle them and what areas to avoid, such as their really sharp teeth?
Yeah, so teeth are sharp. The operculum, so their gill plate, they've got points on that, and that'll stick you too, and those aren't fun. And then their dorsal fins are also super sharp. Best way to do it is if you're in a boat, use a net.
Yeah.
Their mouths are pretty tough. All those teeth in there need something hard to attach to, so they got tough mouths. And a lot of times, even if you think you set the hook really good, you might not have.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll get to the boat and they'll flop and they'll spit the hook. And if you got them in the net, at least they're caught.
Right.
If you can get them in the boat.
Right. I got to say, talking about spitting the hook, my very first walleye that I ever caught, I was out, we were trolling, me and my dad, and at the time, we had just moved here, and so we weren't super knowledgeable about walleye fishing. So we were just trying to catch sand bass, honestly. And we're trolling with some crankbaits at like 15 foot right off some rocks. And I catch this thing, and as I mentioned, like I'm starting to reel it in, and I'm like, man, am I like pulling up a tire that's full of mud or, you know, somebody's boot like you see in the movies? And it takes me probably 3-4 minutes to bring this fish in. And when I finally do, I'm reeling it in, and my dad leans down to grab the fish, and he grabs it and starts to bring it up, and that fish shakes, spits the hook, treble hook goes right into the back of his thumb. And my very first walleye goes bloop, right back into the water off the back of the boat. I was like, man, well, I'd have loved to take a picture with it, you know. Yep. But I have the whole thing on video, so it's pretty funny. But
good.
We're going to, like, what's your preferred way to fish for walleye? So are you a boat angler, bank angler, mix of both?
Usually boat angler.
Okay.
I can get to most places where people are going to bank fish.
Right.
So just being able to move around a little bit more than having to grab all my stuff and walk farther.
Right.
Just kind of use a trolling motor and scoot around to get to those places where you want to look for fish.
Gotcha. So aside from Canton, what are some other good lakes that you possibly like to fish for walleye here in the state?
Well, in my region, I really like Fort Supply as well.
Okay.
So it's a little harder to fish. It's kind of sandy, flat, shallow, but it's a decent fishery. Foss has a decent walleye fishery as well.
It's a little more southwest.
Correct. Yep.
It's one of those things where, like, again, they're one of our unknown, like, gems, a hidden gem here for the state, because you can get such great meat off of them.
Yep.
They taste great, just like our catfish do.
Yeah.
And you just got to do your research. Our website is a great tool to finding all of the things you need when looking to fish for walleye.
Yep.
So going back to you like to fish off a boat. So we were talking about trolling. Is there a specific speed, depth you like to troll? And I know that varies based on the season, but can you kind of explain that for me?
Usually I try and get as close to the bottom as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Fish it in between 15 to 20 foot of water usually in the summer.
Right.
That's when you usually start trolling. At least what I do is when water gets hot, those fish start getting deeper. Right. And then anywhere between 2 and 2.5 miles an hour, kind of that 2.2, 2.3 is your best if possible. And then just troll the areas where you think they're going to be.
Gotcha. So going to the depth, can you kind of talk about the thermocline and how that affects where the fish will sit in the water column?
Yeah, so your thermocline is where your warmer water and colder water separate.
Mm-hmm.
So your warmer water is going to be on the surface because it's getting hit by the sun.
Right.
And your colder water is denser. It's going to sink to the bottom. And depending on the lake, it'll stratify like that.
Right.
That cold water in the bottom for a cool water species like a walleye, it's going to want to get into that colder water because it prefers it. It grows better in it. It likes living in it. So they're going to head down to those deeper water. I mean, there's still going to be food down there, so it's going to chase food and try and get below that thermocline.
Gotcha. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a certain depth in that thermocline that they'll kind of avoid due to lack of oxygen, right? Just once they get so deep.
Yeah, once you get below it, your oxygen level starts going out because all your production's at the top.
Right.
So the most oxygen you have is going to be right at the top of the water because that's where all your photosynthetic bacteria and stuff are. But then right below that, you're going to have very little oxygen because everything's up there trying to eat the oxygen.
Right.
And then it kind of makes its way down.
Gotcha. Well, Dalton, any other tips, tricks, anything that we might have missed on walleye fishing that you'd like to share with everybody?
Stay patient.
Yeah.
Look for light bites. A lot of times they'll be really light biters. You won't know you have a fish until you go to reel in and there's a fish there.
Yeah, for sure.
So pay attention and just stay out there. If they're not biting, move, change something up, but don't
target
give
your
up on them.
Low light hours instead of, I'd say probably after, 8 o'clock in the morning and after 8 o'clock at night, or before 8 o'clock in the morning, after 8 o'clock at night.
Correct.
That's, like I said, these fish have bigger eyes than most, and so they feed best when the light is thin.
Yes.
And they're sensitive to bright lights, so they choose deeper, darker water. Like I said, dark areas of the lake, wherever you can find those, that's the place to target.
Yes.
So, well, Dalton, man, I sure appreciate you making the drive down here, man.
No problem.
I've had a lot of fun. This episode is Walleye Warrior, and we've got one right here with me. He's the guy. So this episode was sponsored and hosted by the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. Dalton, again, thank you for being here. Taylor, I know you're not here right now, but we miss you. And we will see y'all next time.
Thank you.